Marcus Rodriguez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished loading the last supply crate onto the transport shuttle. The mining station on Kepler 442b was supposed to be a routine assignment, but nothing about this godforsaken planet felt routine. The air tasted metallic, the gravity pulled at his bones in all the wrong ways, and the local wildlife seemed determined to kill anything that moved. He was the only human among a crew of 12 different alien species, all working for the Galactic Mining Consortium. Most of them barely tolerated his presence. Humans were new to the galactic community, having only made first contact 15 years ago. To most aliens, they were primitive, violent, and unpredictable. Marcus didn't care what they thought. He needed the credits, and mining work paid better than anything back on Earth. His sister's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves. The emergency alarm suddenly shrieked across the compound. Marcus dropped his datapad and ran toward the sound, his boots clanging against the metal walkways. Other workers scattered in panic, their various alien voices creating a cacophony of fear. In the central courtyard, he found the source of the chaos. A small transport craft had crashed through the compound's outer fence, smoke pouring from its damaged engines. The pilot's compartment was crushed, but Marcus could hear something else, a high-pitched crying that made his heart race while the other workers stood frozen in shock. Arguing about protocols and safety procedures, Marcus sprinted toward the wreckage. The crying grew louder, more desperate. Through a crack in the hull, he saw movement, something small and injured. "Wait!" shouted Vextar, the Chronari foreman. "The fuel cells could explode. We need to follow evacuation procedures." Marcus ignored him. The crying was getting weaker. Whatever was in there was running out of time. He squeezed through the twisted metal, ignoring the sharp edges that tore at his coveralls. The interior was a mess of sparking wires and leaked coolant. In the back compartment, strapped into a safety harness, was a child. The creature was unlike anything he had ever seen. She stood about 3 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting. Her large, dark eyes were filled with tears, and strange markings covered her arms and face. Most shocking of all, she had 4 arms instead of 2, and each hand ended in delicate, elongated fingers. One of her legs was clearly broken, twisted at an unnatural angle. Green blood seeped from cuts across her face and torso. But what struck Marcus most was how young she looked, maybe 7 or 8 years old in human terms. "Hey there, little one," Marcus said softly, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I'm going to get you out of here." The child looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. She spoke in a language he didn't recognize, her voice weak and shaking. Marcus carefully examined the safety harness. The alien technology was more complex than human designs, with multiple interlocking mechanisms. Smoke was getting thicker, and he could hear the ominous creaking of metal under stress. "Come on," he muttered, working frantically at the release mechanisms. His hands were steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Years of mechanical work had given him an intuitive understanding of how things fit together. Even alien things. The harness finally clicked open. The child immediately tried to stand but collapsed as her broken leg gave way. Marcus caught her gently, lifting her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but he could feel her trembling with pain and fear. "It's okay," he whispered, even though he knew she couldn't understand him. "I've got you." He turned toward the exit, but the opening he had squeezed through was now blocked by fallen debris. The ship's hull groaned ominously around them. Through the smoke, he could see another way out, a larger hole in the opposite wall. But it meant climbing over twisted metal and exposed wiring. The child whimpered in his arms, her forehands clutching weakly at his coveralls. Marcus looked down at her pale face and made his decision. He couldn't leave her here. Carefully, he picked his way through the wreckage, shielding the child's body with his own as sparks showered down around them. A piece of sharp metal sliced across his shoulder, but he didn't stop. The child's breathing was becoming more labored. Outside, he could hear Vextar shouting orders to establish a safety perimeter. The other workers were probably placing bets on whether the crazy human would make it out alive. Marcus reached the hole in the hull and carefully passed the child through first, then squeezed out after her. The moment his feet hit the ground, He scooped her up again and ran. Behind them, the transport craft's fuel cells finally gave way. Exploding in a ball of orange flame that lit up the alien sky, the blast knocked Marcus to his knees. But he managed to shield the child from the worst of it. When the ringing in his ears subsided, he found himself surrounded by his shocked co-workers. They stared at him as if he had grown a second head. "You crazy fool," Vexstar growled, but there was something like admiration in his voice. "You could have been killed." Marcus ignored him, focusing on the injured child in his arms. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin had taken on a grayish tint that couldn't be good. "She needs medical attention now." Dr. Chiantal, the Zephyrian medic, stepped forward. Her insectoid features were unreadable, but her multiple eyes focused intently on the child. "Bring her to the medical bay immediately." "This is—" She paused, studying the child's markings more carefully. "This is most unusual." As Marcus carried the child toward the medical facility, he noticed how the other workers looked at them. Some seemed afraid, others confused. But something in their expressions had changed. They were looking at him differently now, not with the usual mixture of disdain and suspicion, but with something approaching respect. He didn't understand why saving one injured child was such a big deal. But the weight of their stares told him that something significant had just happened. Something that would change everything. Dr. Chiantal worked with mechanical precision, her forearms moving independently as she examined the injured child. Marcus stood in the corner of the medical bay, watching nervously as various alien medical devices hummed and beeped around the small patient. "Her bone structure is remarkably delicate," the doctor muttered, running a scanner over the child's broken leg. "But these markings, I have never seen anything like them." The child had been unconscious for 3 hours. Her breathing had stabilized, but her pale blue skin still held that worrying grayish tint. Marcus found himself unable to leave, despite Vexstar-S repeated orders to return to work. "Why do you care so much?" asked Zara, a Balerian engineer whose crystalline features sparkled under the medical bay's bright lights. "She is not even your species." Marcus looked at the small form lying on the medical table. "She's a kid, that's enough." The other aliens in the room exchanged glances that Marcus couldn't interpret. In the 15 years since first contact, humans had gained a reputation throughout the galaxy. They were known for their violence, their unpredictability, their tendency to fight first and ask questions later. But this behavior confused them. A soft chime from Dr. Chiantal's equipment drew everyone's attention. "I am detecting traces of royal pheromones," she announced, her compound eyes widening. "This child is not merely of noble birth. She carries the genetic markers of the ruling class." "Ruling class of what?" Marcus asked. Before the doctor could answer, the child's eyes fluttered open. She looked around the medical bay with confusion and fear, her gaze finally settling on Marcus. To everyone's surprise, she tried to sit up and reach toward him with one of her forearms. "Easy there, little one," Marcus said gently, moving closer to the table. The child's fingers wrapped around his hand with surprising strength. Dr. Chiantal's scanner suddenly erupted in a series of urgent beeps. "Impossible," she whispered, studying the readings. "According to these genetic markers, this child belongs to the Vaeltheran Empire." The medical bay fell silent. Even Marcus, despite his limited knowledge of galactic politics, had heard of the Vaeltheran Empire. They were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in known space, controlling over 300 star systems. They were also notoriously isolationist and had never joined the Galactic Consortium. "That's impossible," Zara said, her crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. "The Vaeltherans haven't been seen in this sector for over 50 years, and they certainly wouldn't allow their children to travel in unmarked transport crafts." The child spoke again, her voice weak but insistent. The words were melodic, almost song-like, but completely incomprehensible to everyone present. "Can anyone translate?" Marcus asked. "The Vaeltheran language is classified," Dr. Chiantal replied. "Only approved diplomatic personnel are permitted to learn it, but—" She hesitated, studying her readings again. "Based on these genetic markers, I believe we may be looking at someone very important, Possibly even Imperial family? Marcus felt the child's grip on his hand tighten. Her large, dark eyes were fixed on his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. It was as if she was trying to memorize every detail. "What do we do?" Vextar asked, his usual gruff demeanor replaced by obvious anxiety. "If this is truly Vaeltheran nobility, keeping her here could be considered an act of war." "We treat her injuries and try to contact her people," Marcus said firmly. "She's hurt and alone. Everything else can wait." "You don't understand, Doctor," Shiantal said, her voice taking on an urgent tone. "The Vaeltherans have very specific customs regarding their children, especially their nobility. They are protected by ancient laws that—" The child spoke again, this time with more strength. She pointed at Marcus and then at herself, repeating the same phrase over and over. "I wish we knew what she was trying to say," Marcus muttered. At that moment, the medical bay's communication system crackled to life. "All personnel to emergency stations," came the announcement. "We have 3 unidentified vessels approaching at high velocity." Through the medical bay's viewport, Marcus could see them coming. 3 sleek silver ships that seemed to bend light around their hulls, making them appear almost ethereal. They moved with a grace that made human spacecraft look like clumsy freight haulers. "Vaeltheran warships," Vextar breathed. "How did they find us so quickly?" "Their technology is far beyond ours," Dr. Shiantal explained. "If this child carries a genetic tracker, they could have located her from halfway across the galaxy." The child struggled to sit up again, her eyes wide with what looked like fear. She clutched Marcus's hand tighter and spoke rapidly in her musical language. "She seems scared," Marcus observed. "Shouldn't she be happy that her people found her?" Before anyone could answer, the communication system crackled again. This time, the voice that came through was different, deep, authoritative, and speaking perfect galactic standard. "Attention, mining facility. You are harboring property of the Vaeltheran Empire. Surrender the child immediately and your deaths will be swift." A casual mention of their deaths sent a chill through the room. The Vaeltherans were not known for making idle threats. "Property," Marcus said, anger creeping into his voice. "She's not property. She's a little girl." The child seemed to understand his tone, if not his words. She looked up at him with something that might have been gratitude, then spoke again in her own language. This time, the words sounded almost like a plea. "We have to give her back," Zara said, her crystalline form flickering rapidly with anxiety. "The Vaeltherans will destroy this entire station if we don't comply." "No," Marcus said firmly. "Not until we know she be safe." "Safe?" Vextar laughed bitterly. "Human, these are her people. Of course she be safe." But as Marcus looked down at the child's frightened face, he wasn't so sure. Something about this situation felt wrong. If she was truly Imperial nobility, why had she been traveling in an unmarked, poorly maintained transport? Why did she seem more afraid of the approaching ships than relieved? "We need more time," Marcus said. "Her leg isn't properly healed yet. Moving her could cause permanent damage." It was a weak excuse and everyone knew it. But Dr. Shiantal surprised him by nodding in agreement. "The human is correct. The bone regeneration process has only just begun. Transporting her now could indeed cause complications." The communication system crackled again. "You have 1 hour to comply. After that, we will take the child by force and this facility will be eliminated as a security threat." Marcus looked around the room at the frightened faces of his co-workers. Then he looked down at the small child who was still gripping his hand as if her life depended on it. Her dark eyes met his, and he saw something there that decided it for him. He saw trust. Marcus stood in the main conference room, facing a room full of terrified alien workers. The 3 Vaeltheran warships hung in the sky outside like silver daggers, their mere presence making the station's hull creak with invisible pressure. "You're insane," Station Commander Kellex declared. His reptilian features flushed with anger. "You want us to defy the Vaeltheran Empire for one child? They'll turn this entire station into space dust." "Maybe," Marcus replied calmly. "But something's not right about this situation. Did any of you see how scared she got when those ships arrived?" That's not how someone reacts when their rescuers show up. She's probably traumatized from the crash, Zara argued, though her crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. Children don't think rationally after experiencing something like that. Marcus shook his head. I've worked with scared kids before. This is different. She's not just traumatized, she's terrified of going back. And what exactly do you propose we do? Vexstar asked sarcastically. Fight the most powerful empire in known space with mining equipment? I propose we find out the truth first, Marcus said. Dr. Shiantel, you said her injuries were consistent with a crash, right? The insectoid doctor nodded slowly. Yes, but I also found something else during my examination. Old scars, some of them very old. The pattern suggests. She hesitated. It suggests repeated injuries over time. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was implying. That's impossible, Commander Kellic said. The Veilthurans are a civilized species. They don't abuse their children, especially not their nobility. Then explain the scars, Marcus challenged. Before anyone could answer, the communication system activated. The same deep, authoritative voice filled the room. Your hour is nearly up. Prepare to surrender the child or face the consequences? Marcus looked around the room at his co-workers. He saw fear in every face and he couldn't blame them. What he was asking them to do went against every instinct for survival. I understand if you can't support this, he said quietly. But I can't hand over a scared little girl without knowing she'd be safe. If you want to evacuate the station, I won't stop you. To his surprise, Dr. Chantel was the first to speak. I took an oath to protect my patients, regardless of species or politics. I will not abandon an injured child. Zara's crystalline form stopped flickering. My people were once enslaved by a more powerful race. We swore never to stand by while others suffered the same fate. One by one, the other workers voiced their support. Even Vexstar, grumbling loudly about human stupidity, declared that he wouldn't abandon his post. Only Commander Kellic remained opposed. This is mutiny, he declared. I'm ordering an immediate evacuation. With respect, sir, Marcus said, you can order it all you want. But that little girl isn't leaving this station until I know she be safe. Kellic's reptilian features darkened with rage. But before he could respond, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. The lights dimmed as emergency power kicked in. Sir? Came a voice over the intercom. The Veilthuran ships are charging their weapons. Through the conference room's viewport, Marcus could see energy building along the hulls of the 3 warships. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. That's it, Kellic declared. I'm surrendering the child before they destroy us all. He lunged for the communication controls, but Marcus was faster. Years of manual labor had kept him in excellent shape, and he caught the commander's wrist before he could reach the console. I can't let you do that, Marcus said firmly. Release me immediately, Kellic hissed. That's an order. Sorry, sir. But some things are more important than orders. The standoff was interrupted by a soft voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see the child standing there, supported by a makeshift crutch that Dr. Shiantel had fabricated for her injured leg. She had somehow gotten out of the medical bay on her own. She spoke in her musical language, her words urgent and desperate. Then, to everyone's shock, she switched to broken but understandable Galactic Standard. Please, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. No ... go back, they ... hurt. The room fell dead silent. The fact that she could speak their language meant she had been listening and learning during her recovery. But more importantly, her words confirmed Marcus's suspicions. Who hurts you? Marcus asked gently. Releasing Commander Kellic and moving toward the child, she pointed up at the viewport toward the Veilthuran ships. Father, brothers, always ... hurt, make ... make. Worthy, Dr. Shiantaya's compound eyes fixed on the child with new understanding. The scars, she whispered. They're not from accidents. They're deliberate. The child nodded sadly. Train, fight, win. Or hurt more. Marcus felt a cold rage building in his chest. He had seen enough abused children during his time volunteering at shelters back on Earth. He knew the signs, even across species barriers. "What's your name?" he asked us softly. "Narration," she replied. "Princess. But no want. We call her Lyra," Marcus said to the room. "And she stays here until we can guarantee her safety." Commander Calyx looked around the room desperately. "You're all insane. We can't protect one child against 3 warships." "Maybe not," Marcus admitted. "But we can try." As if summoned by his words, the communication system activated again. But this time, the voice was different, younger, with an edge of cruelty that made everyone's skin crawl. "Little sister," the voice said in perfect galactic standard, "we know you can hear us. Your pathetic attempt at hiding has failed. Come out now, and your punishment will be educational." Narration immediately collapsed to the floor, curling into a ball and whimpering. Marcus was beside her in an instant, gently lifting her into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't let them hurt you." The voice from the ships continued, growing more impatient. "You have 5 minutes to surrender our property, or we will take her by force. The deaths of your alien friends will be added to your lessons in consequence." Marcus looked around the room at his co-workers' frightened faces. They were terrified, but none of them had backed down. They were willing to fight an impossible battle for one small alien child they barely knew. He had never been more proud to work with them. "Dr. Shiantal," he said quietly, "is there any way to contact the Galactic Consortium? They need to know what's happening here." "Our communications are being jammed," she replied. "But I may be able to send a short-range medical distress signal. Other ships in the system might pick it up." "Do it," Marcus said. "And everyone else, prepare for boarding actions. They're coming whether we surrender or not." As his co-workers scattered to their emergency stations, Marcus held Narration close and made her a promise that he hoped he could keep. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. "I swear it." Outside, the 3 Veltharan warships began moving closer to the station, their weapons fully charged and ready to fire. The first Veltharan boarding craft punched through the station's outer hull like a knife through paper. Emergency alarms shrieked as atmosphere vented into space, but the mining station's emergency systems quickly sealed the breach. Marcus had barricaded himself and Lyrazan in the station's emergency command center, the most heavily armored section of the facility. The other workers had spread throughout the station, using their knowledge of the layout to create defensive positions. "They're inside," Vextar reported over the intercom, his voice tight with fear. 7 boarding parties, all heading toward the central sections. Marcus checked his improvised weapons, a plasma cutter from the workshop, and a handful of industrial charges that could serve as grenades in a pinch. It wasn't much against trained Veltharan warriors, but it would have to do. Lyrasan sat, huddled in the corner, her forearms wrapped around her knees. She had been silent since the boarding began, but her large, dark eyes tracked every movement Marcus made. "Why you help?" she asked suddenly, her broken galactic standard echoing in the small room. Marcus paused in his preparations and looked at her. "Because it's the right thing to do, but not your people." "Not your problem." "You're a child in danger," Marcus replied simply. "That makes it my problem." She studied his face with an intensity that was unnerving. "Human different, other species they fear. They run, you stay." Before Marcus could respond, the command center's blast door began to glow red hot. Someone was cutting through it with military-grade equipment. "They found us," Marcus muttered, raising his plasma cutter. "Stay behind me, Lyra." The blast door suddenly exploded inward, filling the room with smoke and sparks. Through the haze, 3 figures emerged. They were clearly Veltharan, with the same pale blue skin and 4 arms as Lyrasan, but larger and dressed in form-fitting armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. The leader was obviously related to Lyrasan, the same facial structure, the same dark eyes, but twisted with cruelty and arrogance. This had to be one of her brothers. "Little sister," the figure said in accented galactic standard, "you have caused us considerable inconvenience. Father is most displeased." Lyrasen whimpered and pressed herself against the wall behind Marcus. She's not going anywhere with you, Marcus said firmly, keeping his plasma cutter trained on the intruders. The Veiltharan prince laughed, a sound like breaking glass. A primitive human threatens me? How amusing. Do you have any idea who you are speaking to? Someone who hurts children, Marcus replied. That's all I need to know. The prince's expression darkened. My sister's training is a family matter, not your concern. Her weakness must be purged if she is to be worthy of the throne. There's nothing weak about her, Marcus shot back. She survived a crash that should have killed her. She learned our language in a matter of hours. She's one of the strongest people I've ever met. Strength is not measured in survival or intellect, the prince sneered. It is measured in one's willingness to inflict pain and accept it in return. Our sister has always been deficient in this regard. Marcus felt his anger building. You're talking about torturing a child? I am talking about preparing a future empress for the realities of rule. But I do not expect a primitive species to understand. The prince gestured to his companions, who began to advance on Marcus and Lyrasen. Marcus raised his plasma cutter, but he knew it was hopeless. These were trained warriors with advanced armor and weapons. He was just a miner with improvised tools, but as the first warrior reached for Lyrasen, she did something unexpected. She stood up and spoke in her own language, her voice carrying an authority that made the warriors pause. The prince's expression shifted to one of surprise, then anger. You dare invoke the ancient protocols? You have not earned that right through trial of pain. What is she saying? Marcus asked, not taking his eyes off the armed warriors. Lyrasen switched to Galactic Standard, her voice stronger than Marcus had ever heard it. I claim protection under ancient law, this human. Showed courage, showed honor. By old ways he has right to speak for me. The prince's face contorted with rage. The old ways are dead. Father abandoned those foolish traditions decades ago. But not forgotten, Lyrasen replied. Not illegal, ancient laws still exist. Marcus didn't understand what was happening, but he could see that the other Veiltharans were confused and uncertain. Whatever Lyrasen had invoked, it was significant. Explain it to me, Marcus said quietly. Old Veiltharan law, Lyrasen said, her eyes never leaving her brother. When strangers show courage to save our child, they become guardian, have right to challenge for protection. The prince laughed harshly. You would hide behind primitive customs? Father will be amused by your desperation. But one of the other warriors stepped forward and spoke in rapid Veiltharan. The prince's expression grew darker as he listened. What is it? Marcus demanded. The warrior who had spoken switched to Galactic Standard. The ancient protection laws are still valid under imperial decree. If this human has truly acted as guardian, he has the right to formal challenge. This is absurd, the prince snarled. A primitive human cannot invoke our sacred laws. The laws make no distinction of species, the warrior replied firmly. Only of action and honor, Marcus was beginning to understand. If I challenge you, what happens to Lyrasen? If you win, the warrior explained, she remains under your protection until she reaches the age of majority. If you lose, she returns to face her training. And what does this challenge involve? The prince's cruel smile returned. Single combat to the death or submission. But do not worry, human, I will make it quick. Marcus looked down at Lyrasen, who was watching him with a mixture of hope and terror. He thought about the scars Dr. Shiental had found, about the fear in the child's eyes when the ships had arrived. He thought about his sister back on Earth, fighting her own battle against a disease that was slowly killing her. About how he would want someone to protect her if he couldn't. I accept, Marcus said firmly. The prince's smile widened. Excellent, we will use the station's cargo bay. It will provide adequate space for your brief resistance. As they prepared to leave the command center, Lyrasen grabbed Marcus's hand with all four of hers. You understand, she whispered urgently. My brother. Trained since birth, never lose fight, you will die. Marcus squeezed her hands gently. Maybe, but sometimes dying for something is better than living with doing nothing. As they walked toward the cargo bay, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The warrior who had supported Lyrasen's claim had seemed almost relieved when Marcus accepted the challenge. And the way he had looked at the prince, there was more going on here than a simple family dispute. And Marcus was about to walk into the middle of it with nothing but a plasma cutter and stubborn determination. But as he felt Lyrasen's small hands holding on to his, he knew he had made the right choice. Whatever happened next, at least he had tried. The cargo bay had been cleared of equipment, creating an impromptu arena. The surviving station workers stood along the walls, their faces grim but determined. Despite everything, they had chosen to witness this impossible challenge rather than flee. Prince Kelthor stood in the center of the bay, having removed his liquid metal armor to reveal a lean, powerful frame covered in ritual scars. In each of his 4 hands he held a different weapon, curved blades that seemed to drink in the light around them. Marcus faced him with just his plasma cutter and whatever courage he could muster. He had removed his heavy work coveralls, leaving him in just his basic uniform. He felt ridiculously underprepared. Like bringing a knife to a gunfight, Lyrasen sat against one wall, flanked by the Vaeltheron warriors who had arrived with her brother. The one who had spoken up about the ancient laws, Commander Zethril. Marcus had learned, watched the proceedings with an unreadable expression. "The terms are simple," Commander Zethril announced in his formal voice. "Combat continues until one participant yields or can no longer fight. The victor claims guardianship of Princess Lyrasen." "This is madness," Dr. Shiantel whispered to Vextar. "That human will be dead in seconds." But Vextar was studying the scene more carefully. "Look at the commander's posture," he murmured back. "And the way the other warriors are positioned. Something's not right." Prince Kelthor raised his 4 weapons and smiled cruelly at Marcus. "I will try to make this educational for my sister. She must learn that there are consequences for defying family. And I'm going to teach you something too," Marcus replied, activating his plasma cutter. "I'm going to show you what humans do when someone threatens our kids." The prince lunged forward with inhuman speed, all 4 blades moving in a deadly pattern designed to overwhelm any defense. Marcus barely managed to dodge, the alien metal whistling past his ear close enough to part his hair. The fight that followed was brutal and one-sided. Kelthor moved like a dancer, each motion flowing seamlessly into the next. His 4 arms gave him an impossible advantage, allowing him to attack from multiple angles simultaneously while maintaining perfect balance. Marcus, by contrast, fought like a brawler. He had no formal training, no elegant technique. But he had something else, the desperate fury of someone fighting to protect an innocent child. Every time one of the prince's blades found its mark, every time he stumbled or fell, he thought of Lyrasen's scared face and forced himself to keep going. "You fight well for a primitive," Kelthor admitted as his blade opened to cut across Marcus's ribs. "But you cannot win. Submit now, and I will grant you a quick death." "Not happening," Marcus gasped, swinging his plasma cutter in a wide arc that forced the prince to step back. As the fight continued, Marcus began to notice something. The prince was skilled, but his attacks were flashy, designed more for intimidation than efficiency. He was fighting like someone who had never faced a real challenge, who had always relied on superior equipment and training to overwhelm weaker opponents. More importantly, Marcus realized that Kelthor was enjoying this. He was dragging out the fight, savoring Marcus's pain and desperation. It was a show of dominance, meant to break Lyrasen's spirit as much as defeat her protector. That realization changed everything for Marcus. This wasn't just about winning or losing anymore. It was about showing Lyrasen that bullies could be beaten, that courage mattered more than superior strength. The next time Kelthor lunged forward, Marcus did something unexpected. Instead of dodging or blocking, he stepped directly into the attack. 2 of the prince's blades bit deep into his shoulders. But the unexpected move brought him inside the alien's guard before Kelthor could react. Marcus drove his elbow into the prince's solar plexus with all his remaining strength. The impact doubled the Vaeltheron over, and Marcus followed up by grabbing 2 of his opponent's wrists and twisting hard. Kelthor dropped 2 of his weapons, hissing in pain and surprise. For the first time in the fight, he looked uncertain. "What? How did you got double quote?" "I told you," Marcus said, breathing heavily. "Humans protect our kids. All of them." The prince's uncertainty quickly turned to rage. He lashed out with his remaining weapons, abandoning all pretense of skill in favor of brutal fury. But anger made him sloppy, and Marcus had been in enough bar fights back on Earth to know how to deal with an angry opponent. He ducked under a wild swing and tackled Kelthar around the waist, driving him to the ground. They rolled across the cargo bay floor, each trying to gain advantage. The prince's superior strength should have ended it quickly, but Marcus fought with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. In the end, it was a lucky break that decided the fight. As they grappled for control of the plasma cutter, Kelthar's elbow struck one of the fallen alien blades. The weapon sliced deep into his arm, severing tendons and nerves. The prince screamed and rolled away, clutching his injured limb. Two of his forearms were now useless, and the other two shook with pain and shock. Marcus struggled to his feet, his own body a mass of cuts and bruises. He pointed the plasma cutter at the fallen prince and waited. "Yield," he said simply. Kelthar looked up at him with hatred burning in his dark eyes. "Never. I would rather die than submit to a primitive." "Then you're an idiot," Marcus replied. "Because this was never about beating you. It was about proving a point." He looked around the cargo bay at the watching faces, his fellow workers, the Vaeltheron warriors, and most importantly, Lyrazan. "The point is that some things are worth fighting for, even when you can't win, and that anyone who hurts children is a coward, no matter how skilled they think they are." Commander Zethral stepped forward, and for the first time, Marcus saw something like approval in his alien features. "The challenge is concluded," he announced formally. "Victory goes to Marcus Rodriguez of Earth. Princess Lyrazan remains under his protection." But Kelthar wasn't finished. With his remaining good arm, he reached for a concealed weapon, a small energy pistol hidden in his belt. "If I cannot have her," he snarled, "then no one will." The weapon powered up with a high-pitched whine, aimed directly at Lyrazan's small form. Marcus didn't think. He simply moved, throwing himself between the princess and the energy blast. The beam caught him square in the chest, and pain beyond description tore through his body. As he fell to the deck, the last thing he heard was Lyrazan screaming his name, but he also heard something else, the distinctive hum of multiple Vaeltheran weapons powering up. And he realized that Commander Zethral and his warriors had been waiting for exactly this moment. The coup had begun. Marcus woke up in the medical bay to the familiar hum of Dr. Chiantal's equipment. Every inch of his body felt like it had been run through a fusion reactor, but he was alive. More surprisingly, he could move all his limbs. "Easy," came a gentle voice. He turned his head to see Lyrazan sitting beside his bed, her four hands carefully holding one of his. She looked different somehow, more composed, more confident. "What happened?" Marcus asked, his voice rough from the breathing tube that had apparently been removed recently. "You saved my life," Lyrazan replied in much clearer galactic standard than before. Again, Dr. Chiantal appeared at the foot of the bed, her compound eyes bright with what might have been amusement. "You were clinically dead for approximately 4 minutes. Vaeltheran medical technology is quite impressive, though their field medics were more concerned with keeping you alive than comfortable." "Vaeltheran medics?" "Commander Zethral and his forces," Lyrazan explained. "They were not loyal to my brother or father. They represent a faction that has long opposed the current regime's methods." Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his chest. "So what happened to your brother?" Lyrazan's expression darkened. "He is in custody along with his supporters. When he attempted to murder you after the formal challenge, he violated every law of honor our people hold sacred. Even his own guards turned against him. And your father will face trial before the Imperial Council. The evidence of abuse that Dr. Chiantal documented, combined with my brother's actions here, has given the opposition faction the proof they needed to act." Marcus looked around the medical bay and noticed it was much more crowded than before. Dozens of Vaeltheran warriors in elegant armor stood at attention along the walls, their weapons ceremonially sheathed. "Why are they all here?" Narration stood up from her chair and, to Marcus's complete shock, knelt beside his bed. The entire room of Veltharan warriors immediately followed suit, dropping to one knee in perfect synchronization. "Because," she said solemnly, "they wish to honor the human who showed our people what true courage looks like." "I don't understand." Commander Zethral stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a scarred but kind face. "For generations, our people have believed that strength comes from the ability to endure and inflict pain. We taught our children that mercy was weakness, that compassion was failure. But when we arrived and saw what had happened here," another warrior added, "we witnessed something we had never seen before. A member of an alien species willing to die to protect one of our children, not for political gain or strategic advantage, but simply because it was right." Narration took Marcus's hand again. "The story of what you did is already spreading throughout our empire. Humans are no longer seen as primitive or violent. They are seen as the people who taught us that true strength lies in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the attention. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Commander Zethral said firmly. "You did what anyone should do. There is a difference, and it is that difference that will change our civilization." Dr. Shiantal moved to check Marcus's readings. "You should know that your actions have had consequences far beyond this station. 3 other Veltharan factions have declared their support for Princess Narration as the rightful heir to the throne. The old guard is collapsing. You're going to be Empress?" Marcus asked Narration. "Eventually," she replied. "But first, I have much to learn. And I was hoping—" She hesitated, looking suddenly young and uncertain again. "I was hoping my guardian might help teach me." "Guardian?" Commander Zethral spoke up. "Under ancient Veltharan law, which has been formally reinstated by the Imperial Council as of this morning, you are Princess Lyrasen's official protector until she reaches the age of majority. The position comes with considerable authority and responsibility." "What kind of authority?" "The kind that lets you tell an entire interstellar empire to leave a little girl alone until she's ready to rule," Vexstar said from the doorway. Marcus was surprised to see his gruff foreman grinning broadly. "The kind that makes you officially the most important human in the galaxy." Marcus looked around the room at all the expectant faces, alien and human alike. Then he looked down at Lyrasen, who was watching him with the same trust she had shown when he first pulled her from the wreckage. "I'm just a minor," he said finally. "No," Lyrasen replied, squeezing his hand. "You are the human who taught an empire that children should be protected, not broken. You are the person who showed us that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it." She gestured to the kneeling warriors around them. "These are some of the finest soldiers in known space. And they kneel before you not because of your rank or your power, but because of your character." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing everything that had happened. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but determined. "All right, but we're going to do things differently. No more training through pain. No more fear-based education. If you're going to rule an empire, you're going to learn to do it with compassion." Lyrasen's face lit up with a smile that transformed her features from alien to unmistakably, universally human in its joy. "I was hoping you would say that." As she stood up, the assembled warriors rose as well, but they remained at attention. Commander Zethral stepped forward one final time. "Marcus Rodriguez of Earth," he said formally. "The Veltharan Empire recognizes you as guardian of the air, protector of the future Empress and friend to our people. Your word carries the weight of law, your wisdom will guide our future, and your courage has already changed our destiny. And," Lyrasen added with a mischievous grin that reminded Marcus she was still just a child, "despite everything, you never have to work in a mine again if you don't want to." Marcus laughed, ignoring the pain it caused in his chest. "We'll see about that. Someone's got to keep me grounded." As the formal ceremony concluded and the warriors began to file out, Marcus realized that his life had been forever changed by one simple decision: to pull an injured child from a crashed ship. He had gained a daughter, an empire's respect, and a responsibility that would reshape the galaxy, but most importantly, he had kept his promise. Narration was safe, and she would grow up knowing that someone had thought her life was worth fighting for. In the end, that was all that really mattered. Outside the medical bay's viewport, human and Valthoran ships worked side by side to repair the mining station. It was a small symbol of a much larger change that was already beginning to sweep across the galaxy. The age of human compassion had begun, and it started with one man who refused to abandon a scared little girl,